You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, you got me. That's about it. And that's because we will be talking about the eclipse, the black sun, magic, and death. This is a topic that I have been covering on other shows, and I'm pretty sure I reposted a few of the episodes on this end and released them on my show. But I thought, why not cover this topic myself on the show? And I felt that there was really no reason for anybody else to come on because it's my story. So here we are. The reasoning for this, again, and I've been saying this on other people's shows, is that I do find it very important to talk about this because I don't seem to be hearing it anywhere else. And that could easily just be because people haven't had those experiences, who are in the community or, on the internet or social media, podcasting, that may be talking about the occult or covering the occult. And in a sense, that could even be a problem in itself. If there is an experience that is needed to fully understand something and you haven't had it, there might be a lot that you're missing out on and just confused and don't get. And that, it is what it is. I'm pretty sure there are people out there who have had these experiences and they just, aren't talking about it for other reasons as well. But for myself, there's no reason why I can't come out and talk about these things. I'm not under anybody's thumb. Nobody can copyright my experiences and tell me that, I can't talk about it. Nobody told me this stuff. It's all stuff that I experienced on my own. For new people, maybe that are listening and may not know all that much about my past and experience, and not that I I really don't like to put too much into it anymore. But I was an ex-member of the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. I was in that, probably about 6 years. Did a couple of initiations. Didn't think it was the place for me anymore. It was around the time of COVID and just some funny stuff was going on there, and plus they're getting into political things in a way, and I wasn't feeling that, and I started having experiences on my own and just realized I don't need that place. But that is part of, I guess, my story. Ceremonial magician. I've been messing with magic for a while, studying the occult. And, when it comes down to real magic, and this is something I really want to stress at the beginning of this, and I've been saying it over and over again on other shows. When it comes to real magic, I mean, first off, in my opinion, there will be a change going on within oneself. I do think there is a lot going on within the eyeball in itself, besides the rest of the body. And again, I do highly suggest, please, start looking into the eyeball if you haven't. If you're really interested into the occult and occult symbolism, I'm begging people to start looking into the eyeball and seeing how it works. Especially look into the zonules of Zin, the optic nerve, the vitreous humor, the aqueous humor, the lens, the ora serrata. Just start to get ideas of how the eye works, in a basic way, and try to look at as many different pictures as you can of these things. And maybe even try under different types of, viewing. Sometimes under different types of microscopes or whatever, you might get a different look. I highly suggest, please start to entertain that and look into that. And the whole aspect of death. We always seem to say the death and the rebirth, but I don't think we really take in the death. I don't think we take that too seriously. And, like I've been saying on the other shows, and, say it now, if you really want to play with magic, if you want to mess with magic, real magic and have a magical experience, you're going to have to die, pretty much. You're going to have to knock yourself out, pull your plug out. I mean, to be totally honest, in the long run, it just seems like temporary suicide if you really look at it. But that's is what it is. You know, in a sense, it almost seems like, well, how else would you actually be able to understand the spirit world unless you kind of crossed over into it? So maybe if you don't look at it like that, you know, maybe you could start seeing how it might make a little bit more sense. I mean, the Native Americans and the shamans talked about it. So, you know, in this episode, you know, I do want to highly stress that death is a part that is needed to have a magical experience. There's stuff going on with inside your eyeballs. When that happens, when the light goes out, you know, it's doing things a little bit differently than it's been. And also the black sun or the eclipse, dark sun. You know, that is a vision that I see every time before I have a magical experience. And, you know, others have as well. There is a lot of common visions people will have when they cross the abyss. And that seems to be one of them. It is also, in my opinion, deeply occulted symbol. We covered something, I think this will come out before it drops, but I mean, me, Thrash, Mike, and Teresa, you know, covered eclipse symbolism. And this stuff is all over the place. I mean, the show was over 2 hours, and like, we really didn't even touch on all that much that we could have. We even left stuff out. But it is very prevalent when you start to kind of start looking for this eclipse. And, you know, again, from my experience, that eclipse will start doing other things, and it will change a little bit, but it is what I see, in my opinion, before I die and cross the abyss. That's why sometimes I will consider it a vision of, you know, the vision of beauty of death. You know, the beauty of death. It is a very beautiful, wild scene to watch before it happens. Yeah. So I really want to kind of focus on that. Throughout the rest of this episode, I will try to cover, you know, physical feelings that I've also had. That is another thing that I think is huge to add, is that there will be physical feelings, from my opinion. Again, I said this on somebody else's show. There is nothing like dying, except for, I mean, for me, out of anything that I have experienced, except for dying, you know, dying feels like dying. There's nothing else that comes close to that. You know, so it was even a feeling that I have never felt before, and only feel when I mess with Magick and actually jump into the abyss. That is the only time I've ever felt that. It was a very distinct feeling. There's very distinct feelings that will go on throughout the whole body until the end. And it is of my opinion that those feelings will even try to be like replicated or expressed in occult art, especially in Renaissance art, occult symbolism. You know, there is a lot of stuff that I do believe is misunderstood, because now that we're using symbolism to express a physical feeling, and people are thinking it means code for something else. I have said plenty of times, once it really starts to click out and I really start to, you know, go somewhere, it's as if I blow up into 1,000 butterflies. You know, and it's like you feel like the fluttering throughout your whole self, and then, like, you know, just expansion. So, you know, maybe sometimes butterflies aren't always, you know, what people think. Maybe it's being used as art to express a feeling that somebody felt within oneself before they crossed over. You know, and again, I do want to just mention that, another reason why I'm doing this is because I really do believe that these are some of the deeper secrets of secrets. I think there was a lot of stuff that is expected to be known and is allowed to be known because it's really not the secrets of secrets. In my opinion, when it really starts coming to occult secrets, it all falls in within the experience of death and the change that's going on within oneself, in their body, especially in their eyes and their brain. I think that's just my opinion. Understanding that stuff is some of the secrets of secrets in, occult science. And I'm sure there's people out there talking about it. I just haven't come across it. And I guess even in the sphere of podcasts that either I mess with or know of, don't seem to be hearing anybody else bringing these things up. And when it comes to occultism, unfortunately, I think we're stuck in a vacuum. On purpose or not, I don't know. But we don't seem, this is just my opinion, it doesn't seem like we're really progressing anywhere. And I think it's because we're kind of looking at things the wrong way. Again, when it comes to a magical experience, I don't think, myself, or whoever has this experience, they will not see the world the same way as they used to. It's going to change a lot of things, and then you're going to start seeing how a lot of things make a lot more sense when it comes to occult art and symbolism. And I just really want to try to touch on this stuff again, because I just think that we're kind of stuck at a roadblock here. I think there's a lot of stuff that's being handed out that just creates hate and fear. We're given a lot of names of people to attach fear and hate to. We're given a name and, maybe a few pictures of some like a supposed occultist or order or famous person we don't like. And we just associate, horrible supposed occult practices that they do. And like, just like a magnet, it just like sucks this fear and hate to this image in this person that we have just been handed and told supposedly this is what they do. And none of it seems to be killing themselves to have an experience with God. And that's what they are doing if they are occultists and they are magicians. We don't hear about that. That's even another thing that I like to bring up, because, if you have a megalomaniac that is trying to, get power or control people, if you are knocking your own self out, pulling your own plug out, if you're riding the lightning and you're taking the risk of not coming back yourself, and that could be the last time, what makes you think that they actually care at all about people they've never met? They're knocking themselves out to have understanding that other people don't. So then they can, manipulate humanity and get what they want. They ain't going to care about somebody else they don't know. They're totally disposable. They're partially disposable themselves, if you think about it. So, I think that's another way to even look at it too, in my opinion. If you are messing with magic and you are, not a good person, I don't think your care for other humans will be really that much. It'll be easy to be a piece of shit. But yeah, in this type of stuff, and it's not to be, clickbait or to sound edgy or whatever. It's just my opinion. This stuff is real and it needs to be talked about. And it's, if anything, again, like I'm saying before, telling you to look into the eyes. That's not going to create hate or fear. I'm not giving people someone to go hate or fear and put the point the finger at. It's stuff that you'll actually have to be educated, and you'll learn. And I do feel, I don't know how, it could just be human nature, but that doesn't really seem to be what goes on when it comes to occultism or occult shows in the conspiracy community. My opinion, not really actually learning too much. You're just learning people to point fingers at and blame and hate, and you're still not understanding magic or anything like that. So yeah, I think we need to start throwing different things into the community, start talking about different stuff, because it's very stagnant, and the understanding of occultism, I feel like, is just getting worse and worse, like almost backwards at times. I will be totally honest, because of the fans, and I guess my show, that obviously I do come in contact with people that, are getting what I'm throwing down, and that's very nice to see that. But it just still seems like, if you look at social media, I guess you people will understand some of the silly stuff that seems to go on attached to occultism and magic. Some of it is just like, really? But, all right. So, yeah, getting into the Black Sun, death, and crossing the abyss. Again, just a reminder, look into the eyes, learn how the eyes work. And if you want to play with magic, if you want to mess with magic, you're going to have to die. So, don't say I didn't tell you so. Moving forward, I would also like to mention that any time that I've had these magical experiences, I was sober. I do not advocate using drugs for a magical experience. It is also my opinion that a lot of times when drugs are used and people think they're having a magical experience or some spiritual experience, it may not actually be all that and all that positive. My opinion, if you want to have a magical experience, you have to shut your eyes off. You have to close them. When you're tripping out on mushrooms and acid, I guess unless you go into a meditation or DMT, you got your eyes open. You're still in Lucifer's world, in my opinion, then at that point. You got to close those eyes and cut that mofo off. So just, want to mention that drugs was not a thing. I wasn't even smoking weed again at that point. That was something that started after the fact and with COVID. So, just want to put that out there. There's no drugs involved. So these, you can't blame that for the visions that I've had. Or I can't even use that as a way to explain away what I experienced. And normally, at the moment, and pretty much, except for the first time, any time that I want to even have a magical experience, I'm not even doing a ritual anymore. I am just sitting down or laying down and going into a meditation. I'm closing my eyes. I'm pouring black oil onto the canvas and making it real black. And then I wait for that little dot of light to show up. And that's something I've explained before. Before that light shows up, you got your eyes closed, and I might have been doing certain exercises already prior to even getting into a deep meditation. I might have been trying to move energy up and down or doing chakra work. So there has been some time already where I have, had my eyes closed and, was going in. And it will be black. But then something happens where, like I said, it either looks like I poured paint onto a black canvas and it was darker than what the canvas was. Or, oil came up out of the ground. It made whatever that looked black, this is even darker. At times, a lot of times when that does start to happen and it looks like this black is like really covering the other black, you almost get even almost like an oil slick look that you would see in the streets while you're driving. It almost seems like that is even kind of around it at times. So that will start to happen and it pretty much will spread out. Sometimes it will even start to almost look like a black silk flag, to where it looks like it's even waving, almost like water. Now with that, I have even wondered if it's really not moving and that's light shining onto something to give it the illusion that it's moving. I'm not sure. I know it's a little deep. But it can start to look almost like black water moving, and then all of a sudden it will get real still and it spreads out. And then you get this real bright pin dot, and it looks like it's behind clouds, but it looks so bright and white, and you just see these little etchings of almost, it looks like, I guess, the cloud shapes, but all you see is kind of the outline if you were just drawing the clouds, and layers of it. I think I've said before, almost like a viewfinder, if anybody remembers playing with those as a kid, where you look at it and, you could click the thing on the side, which is real interesting. Even that little symbol right there that certain people love to do, almost looks like you're taking a picture of the viewfinder. That's pulling on your hyaloid canal and making your pupil extend back. That's why some Masons like doing So yeah, I forgot where I was going with that now. But yeah, I will get that pin dot, and I will. It's almost like you gotta hold on to it, and it will start to like get like really bright. And again, the viewfinder, and then again, like it looks like it's like almost like layers of clouds behind it. And then the viewfinder, what I was saying is that if I remember correctly, it was almost like kind of like a lot of layers of things to give an image of a 3D. That is even like another thing with this, that besides it almost looking like that with 3D in a 3D way, believe it or not, it also even feels like you can like almost see like the depth between like you and the dot. It's really hard, but you almost can almost see like depth with your eyes closed. Very weird, very hard to explain. The dot starts to get bigger, and then eventually like the white light, you'll start to see like almost like the black sphere coming within it, and it starts to get bigger and bigger. Not too big, but it starts to get big enough and get a little bit closer. And at this point, a lot of times, I forgot to mention, when I see that pin dot, sometimes it'll almost kind of like fade and go away, or like almost it seems like it's moving around, but I don't think it's moving around. I just think my perception of where I'm looking inside isn't still. You almost kind of have to like lock onto it. And a lot of times when I have been doing that, I'll be like kind of looking up, going cross-eyed, both my eyes looking up, heading towards my pineal gland and focusing on it. That was another thing with a lot of these experiences. I'm like heavily focusing on my pineal gland at this point, to where it's like you feel like immense pressure. And the light does seem to get brighter and get a little bit closer as the harder I would push on it or focus on it. Then at some point where it kind of starts to look like the eclipse, you'll have like kind of like those cloud looks around it is still. But now it starts to look like there's like explosions behind them. And when you start to see certain colors, and then with those designs, almost kind of like the clouds, in my opinion, it starts looking like roses or flowers bursting open. That's even why I have the logo that I use. The eclipse with the roses, open. That reminds me of that image where I would see the eclipse and then it looks like explosions around it, or like, roses blooming open. That's why sometimes I'll use the phrase of watching the roses bloom under the moonlight. Because that's basically what it looks like to me. You'll see that. Then sometimes I don't remember it being every time, but a few times you'll start to get like geometric shapes too after that. It will like almost be like spinning and like flashing and changing. Wild. It's almost like you're like watching something over TV. You're like, holy crap. That will happen sometimes. So when you get those explosions and then you go into the geometric shapes, after that, that's when the movie starts to kick in. That's what I like to say, because it looks like movie reels. The show begins. And at this point, right around here is where I start getting into like the physical feelings, if I remember correctly, or at least like the very intense ones that I'll probably get to like as I'm getting near the end. Yeah, at this point, the eclipse is a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more prominent. And all of a sudden it starts to look like, I've used a couple of different examples, movie reels going really slow. Or very much like subway or train windows. If you were to like be sitting, I guess like standing in a subway system, or even I guess the trains, and you had two of them both coming towards you, and you were like in the middle of two of them, and they were going slow, and you were looking at the windows on the side of them, even like almost the same size too, like rectangular. Starts coming really slow, and it's like in sepia. And it almost has like a tinge over it too. Almost like a cellophane look. And it starts, it's just going slow. And you see these different visions. And, I don't know if it's, to me, I question if it's different times and space. or at least just different areas on the earth. Only once was ever really fully intrigued enough to where I had the experience of it's like, and when this is happening, I don't have a body. It's like I'm just literally watching a movie. It's as if I closed my eyes and there's a projector doing all this. And it's more, in my opinion, way more detailed than like with your eyes open, which is like wild to even admit and crazy to even say. But like to me, the colors are wow. And that is another thing I totally missed out on like I consider the Rainbow Bridge, and I've heard other people tell me that that's what that was too when I told them my experience. At some point, and this is something I can't believe I left out. I really want people to understand this too. This is going to be very close. It's very close to looking like a swastika. I'm just going to keep it 100. It may not be angled. It may be a little bit more curved. You're going to have colors like kind of coming out of the four cardinal directions on that sphere. And like spinning in all these lines. Just spiraling out. Red, blue, purple, and green that I remember. I think that might be it. And you're going to get that spinning, and it starts to almost kind of look like a swastika. I do think that it's possible that symbol is just showing you that they've had these, whoever's behind it, had these visions, has crossed the abyss, and has experienced death. Again, I'm saying that this image is something that pops up, in my opinion, before I die, and to have a magical experience. So if you're killing a bunch of people, or saying you are, why would you not use an image that is associated with dying? There's a little bit more to the Black Sun than I think people want to believe, especially when it comes to Nazis and Nazism. It's almost to the point to where it's like I'd rather people just not even to put their ideas of that stuff to the side and just like try to be open-minded to looking at it in a different way, to suspend your previous beliefs on the Nazi symbolism of the Black Sun. It goes back way farther than them. So yeah, that will happen. But then eventually you start to get the movie reels. And that is even something that I think might quite be John Lennon and I forgot her name, Lana Del Rey, talking about cellophane skies. That's exactly what it looks like to me. Cellophane windows in the sky. And they start coming down. And like I said, one time I seemed pretty intrigued. And again, it's like I'm suspended there, no body. And I kind of went and then turned and looked towards. It's like I turned and looked towards the window. And to me, it looked like, I joke around saying it looked like Utah or a nuclear blast, or Arizona. Is it going to be any different looking? I couldn't tell, but just to me, I got a feeling of uncomfortability. And then was like thinking, I don't want to go there. And then, you start thinking about the eye. It's all over. That's another thing too. At the end of everything, all these experiences, as soon as I started thinking about self, it was done. I believe I disconnect myself from the source because I start already deciding what I'm not as soon as I decide what I am. That tears me away from the whole experience. I cannot think about self. I just have to go with the flow. So, yeah, so the movie reels start coming out. And for the most part, like I said, except for that one time, I couldn't even really tell you a lot of, and plus it's been a minute. It's been over 2 years since I've really jumped into the abyss. I will hover and stare at the eclipse. I'll let it, get pretty far before the poles, before the polarity changes and the white and the black separate. But, I can hold that for a while, and it will give me some benefit, I think. Not fully of what, Magick would do, or jumping into the abyss would do. But it is a pretty safe alternative, I think, for me. But at this point, when the reels start going, and if you kind of don't really pay attention to them, and you just let this image keep doing what it's doing. And if you don't fear, and that is another thing too, not to, make like a wild, bold, outrageous claim, but I do think that this image is also considered the orphanum. And I do think it's very important that if you do ever to start seeing this vision in your mind's eye, don't fear. Unless you don't want to practice magic, then fear all you want so you can come out of it. But if you don't fear and you're down to do what it takes, if you're down to make that ultimate sacrifice, if you're down to make that blood sacrifice and leave the flesh behind and let your soul slip out of your meat suit and click out to the spirit world, if you're down to do that, if you're down to die to get answers and to have an experience with God, then don't fear. Just let that image keep playing. And you'll have an experience that probably 93% of the people in this world will never have because they're too afraid to or don't even know it exists or it's a possibility. Or they've been, duped into believing, just like me and other people, our whole lives about how you actually get in touch with God. You got to go to a church or you got to go through somebody else. No, you can have an experience with God all by yourself. You just need you. And you need the passion to make it happen in the will. A lot of determination and work will go into it. But, yeah. So, if you're willing to go through all that, let that image play out. And then you'll start to feel certain feelings. And that image will begin to change. At this point, normally it would start to feel like from my feet going up to my body is almost starting to disappear. I've said before, it's almost like if wind was blowing by and my legs were sand and from the feet going up to the knees just started being blown away and disappearing. It's as if I literally feel like the energy within my body rising up and everything just seemed non-existent that was below it. It even starts to feel like pressure is starting to build up in the rest of my body as it goes up. Even when it starts to get up to the head. And then for me, I would use that actually to press on the pineal gland more. And I do think that has a lot to do with it. There will be a polarity change, I believe. It's another bold claim that I'm going to make, that I do think putting all that pressure on your pineal gland at some point, the polarity changes and you get shot back into the head. That's why I also even think sometimes they're putting a snake on the headdress. Because that's exactly what's going on. You're pushing your pineal, your third eye out, and then all of a sudden it switches polarity and swings back, shoots you right in the middle of the head, and your soul blasts out the back of your head, wherever the yarmulke would be, and your soul slips out. That's exactly been my experience every time. I am pushing on my pineal gland, I'm holding it there, and then all of a sudden when the poles begin to pull apart, which I'll get to, there is a fucking snap, and it's like looking down the barrel of a gun with that eclipse. It just flies at you and blows your brains out. You don't have to get all edgy, but it's really what it's like, straight up. I do believe that there's some sort of polarity change. It is as if I am the archer shooting myself in the head. I'm pulling that bow out and then letting go. They even say sometimes the hardest part is letting go. Yeah, because you're going to let go and you're going to shoot yourself in the head. Who wants to do that? Who knew that death was a necessity for magic? That's why a lot of the shamans and Indians put themselves under immense stuff. They're bringing themselves to the brink of death to have an experience. So the energy is building up. And then all of a sudden it will just feel like as if I was laying down on the beach. And I guess it sounds weird, as if water was coming up and the soles of my feet weren't really there, or I was hollow. And the water just flowed through my body. And then it's everything that was all here is now getting ready to flow out. And then when it starts to, it feels like a fluttering all throughout your body. as if you're just full of butterflies or you are butterflies. And then it's like, and then they spread out. That would probably be the point when the vision, when those movie reels are going. The next thing after that, you will start to see the black sphere that's in front of the white one start to rise up, start to pull up. And it literally looks like, I guess, polarity or negative and positive. You're starting to see a separation. And after it separates far enough, that's when you feel like the change, and it shoots back, and like even the image of that circle looks like it like kind of flies towards you. I do believe that's what the dude was talking about in Apocalypse Now when he's talking about getting shot in the head with a diamond after he watches the people cut their kids off from being vaccinated. I think that's exactly what that guy was explaining in that movie. And then at that point, the butterflies explode, and then it literally feels like from like my ears around that area that you just get stretched out. And it feels like you're like going out the back of your head. And it literally feels like you've melted, or you've like become weightless, and you feel like almost everything just like fall right off of you. And it is like a feeling that I have never felt in the flesh. The only thing I could ever say that comes close to it is if you took the feeling of love and magnified it by 1,000, maybe you might get close to that. But in my opinion, and I'm not discrediting love here in this world, but that, as I do believe, is probably like true love, what you're feeling. In this moment, when I start to dissipate out of my body, or I believe, there is no fear. There is no thought of hate. There is no guilt and shame in who I am. Just feel a total, immense love. And it is, I feel like for me, it's just the love of existing and being in the experience. It is if like I spread out and I'm part of the fabric of the universe, or whatever I'm experiencing, I'm part of it. And it is an immense, beautiful feeling of love. And then unfortunately, if you start to think of self, you snap out of it. And you open up your eyes and you're like, what the hell? Why is this an option now? It can be a little bit of a mindfuck. You can be like, wow, how come I got to be a part of all that, witness all that, feel all that, and then have to come back to this? It might make you like kind of question, like, what's really the situation with being here? Maybe we're a little bit more screwed than we are, or maybe we're not. But to me, I just was like, wow, like that's an option, but this is what I'm spending like 99.999% of my experience on. Something ain't right. That's screwed up. So, another thing about with messing with magic, at this point, like when you do come back, for me, there'll be all sorts of images and thoughts fluttering back into my mind. I hate to use that phrase, but it is like literally like a download. Some of it is so intense that you would almost believe maybe that you're hearing someone talk to you, but it's just like such loud thoughts. I will see visions of things that I knew prior in the past, but like somehow it's like, it's going to sound crazy. It's like almost like if pictures or cards are being laid down and showing you like a thread between all of them. And you start to like see and understand stuff that literally did not know prior. It's just really, really wild. Now, it's not going to be like the Matrix where you're like, oh, I know Kung Fu. No, you're not gonna, at least that's my experience. You're not going to start busting moves out like that. But every time I have ever messed with magic, stuff that I did not understand in occult symbolism, especially tarot and Kabbalah, all start to make more sense and starts to click. And then you start to see more of it prevalent in other stuff, and then you're like, oh, I'm on the right track. That must have been real. Like, I'm not wrong. These experiences are actually, like, I'm learning something from this stuff. I'm learning the secrets. And I do think that's why some people might abuse it so much. Is because they understand that it's kind of like a cheat code to understanding things. And I'll be totally honest, that is one of the reasons why I have done it in the past. You know, it is pretty wild. It can almost be like maybe even borderline addictive. It's where like, wow, I just have this experience, I have this beautiful experience with God, and like unfortunately I have to open up my eyes and experience this shithole. You even like still start to get more benefits out of the fact. It is a pretty wild experience. And again, with that happening is why I do think, you know, some things pop up and you'll see like, you know, we'll use the pyramids as an example. Could they have gotten that idea because of magical experiences? So if you're tapping into, you know, all consciousness, doesn't matter where you are. You know, you'll get the same idea as somebody else on the other side of the world if we're all tapping into the same thing. Yeah, so those visions that I was saying with the eclipse and all that, every time I practice magic, that happens. Even if I, you know, push myself maybe up into the reels and then stop, I mean, it's always going to happen. And again, you know, it is, I do always seem to have to kind of focus on the pineal gland, and it's like literally as if you're almost like locking in on it as a target. Very weird. And, yeah, and then when you come back, in my opinion, you'll be blessed with gifts. You know, that's just how I look at it. That God kind of blessed you with something. He gave you understanding that you didn't know before. Now, in my opinion, for me to do the right thing, I need to take those gifts and create something out of it and try to pass it on to other people to inspire them to have their own magical experience. So then they can also, you know that there is freedom and there's something greater out there than ourselves in this experience. Something worth, you know, looking forward to, possibly. And then, unfortunately, you'll get, which I think is probably more of the case than not, people have these magical experiences and realize that I can manipulate the rest of humanity for my own gain, my own monetary reasons. And that sucks. And I don't agree with that. You know, but again, for me, if I have been blessed with an experience with God, you know, I need to pass that on and try to tell other people to have the, you know, you can have the same experience as well. It may sound corny, but I really do, you know, that's even part of the show, is for people to get to the understanding and idea of what, you know, really is going on in occultism and magic. And hopefully, like, you'll be able to have your own experience on your own. You know, don't take all my word for it. You know, that's something I say on the show, too. I don't know everything, and I don't, you know, I've got the copyright to this stuff. But I do think I have had some experiences that other people haven't, which does give me the benefit of understanding aspects of magic and the occult that other people don't. And I think if other people were to maybe have their own, you know, magical experiences on their own and understood it for themselves without somebody telling them what it is, it might, you know, really help change the world in a sense. Or you just ended up with more pieces of shit. Who knows? But there's probably a lot that I was going to mention in this show, and I didn't. Even looking at the notes, I pretty much think I got most of it out of there. But again, like, you know, the whole black sun and the eclipse thing, it's not just Nazis. It's going to be an image that you see before you die and cross the abyss. So it's not just, you know, Hitler. It goes way beyond him and way before him. If you want to mess with magic, you're going to have to die. You have to pull your own plug out. You're going to have to be willing to give up everything in that moment just to have an experience with God. And possibly not experience that stuff anymore after you've spoken to God. Maybe you won't come back. You kind of almost have to be okay with that. It's a little bit deeper and darker than most people think. It's not just getting into some, pentagram and just waving a wand around and saying some gibberish. You're actually like removing your soul from the flesh and going somewhere. That might sound crazy, but that's the truth. It probably sounds crazy because nobody's talking about it. It doesn't sound like something that's normal, or talked about. But I think it needs to be. It may make me look crazy or whatever, but it is what it is at this point. I am who I am. I'm an occultist. I'm a magician. I enjoy what I do. I'm not here to take advantage of people, and I'm just trying to pass on the gifts that I was given from magical experiences and all the things that I've learned due to that. Again, I want to reiterate for people that are listening, please, 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 I beg of you, start looking into the eyeballs. Start understanding how it works, how light works, how light reflects, how all that's working in there. Because you're going to be going backwards, riding that eye, riding that light back up to the optic nerve and clicking out. Look into the optic nerve. The zonules is in, the hyaloid canal, the vitreous humor, the aqueous humor, vitreous nerves, the cones, the rods. You look at some cones and rods, you'll see gods wearing those things as headdresses. You'll see that stuff in occult symbolism. People knew what was up a long time ago about the inside of your eye. We got to start entertaining that idea as well. You can look at 1,1600 books where people are drawing the inside of the brain in the eye. Occultists and alchemists. They knew what was up then. We have to start entertaining the eye and the brain and the rest of the body. But it's really important, I think, for the eyes and the brain. That, the black sun, and death. It's all a part of magic. I guess we'll probably keep this one short. This will be a nice little short episode, I guess, for everybody. Probably I'm going to put this one out as a regular, and unfortunately it's because I need shows to start working on these documentaries that I've been talking about forever, that hopefully one day I'll actually get to, when I can build up enough shows done in the bank so I can screw off for a month and work on these things. But I'm trying, so hopefully sooner than later. So yeah, this will probably drop as a regular episode just to give me a buffer and more time. But I do think it is very important. Again, like, I don't want to come out and be like, oh, well, I'm cocky because I had this experience and other people haven't. Anybody can have this experience. It's just, unfortunately, people who have not had this experience, and I'm just going to keep it real, people who haven't even fucking practiced magic somehow have become authorities on this shit. Makes zero fucking sense to me. How are people who have never practiced fucking magic ever, probably didn't even read a whole book, you watched a little bit of Jordan Maxwell and David Icke, and now all of a sudden you're a prophet on what occultism is? All you're doing is peddling fear and ignorance. There is so much of that going on, so much fear and ignorance, it's disgusting. Again, if you go to learn what how the eyeball works, I'm sorry, I'm not giving anybody to hate or fear. I'm giving you something to actually just learn about. People need to start entertaining that shit. People need to start coming up with just, when it comes to occultism, just looking for bad guys to point at. That's not getting us anywhere with understanding what magic is. It's just fear and hate. So please, heed some of the suggestions. Again, when it comes to probably like the regular listeners, this probably isn't really, I'm wasting my time to an extent. This is more for maybe people who come across the show fairly recent or haven't yet, is going to hear this maybe. Please look into all that stuff. Magic is a lot deeper than we, are believing. And yeah, that's it for this one. Just shared my experience. Hopefully people got something out of it. If you have had any experiences like this yourself, these visuals, please hit us up. We're dying to hear from you. So, yeah, for real though, if you have seen these images, please let me know. I'd like to talk to you. So yeah, that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And that's it. Just Nick on this one. Check out the links in the bottom. In case this is your first time listening, we're available on BitChute, Rumble, and YouTube, and all major podcasts. So yeah, check out the link tree in the bottom and all those other things that you can donate to if you want to help the show. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, Everybody be well. Later.